you very much. There's one woman who said to me, what were you trying to raise the money for? And I was trying to raise the money for, towards a scanner at the hospital where my daughter was born. And she said to me, oh, don't think about all the poor babies that might die now. You know, you're really not helping. Thank you very much. It was absolutely, really embarrassing. On the back of that, I got asked to do Mastermind. I went, oh no, okay. And I sort of very politely declined. And anyway, they rang back and said, oh, don't worry, you'll be on with really stupid people, you'll be fine. Right, okay. And they kept trying, and I kept turning them down. And then they rang back and said, on the weakest link, you were raising money for a baby scanner, weren't you? Yes, I was. So anyway, they offered me a donation to the baby scanner appeal, which I couldn't possibly turn down. So my deeply intellectual subject, I had 2 weeks to learn it, subject. My deeply intellectual subject was Star Wars, the original 3 films. And we decided that amongst our training group because we thought there was about 10 of us in the training group. We could all watch the films, we could all kind of, you know, Google stuff and find out. And my training group were absolutely amazing. Every single day, each of them brought 50 questions on Star Wars to training. All of us knew everything there was ever likely to know about Star Wars. And I was still thinking at the back of my head, stupid people, I might be all right on this. I might be able to kind of redeem myself. It doesn't matter I'm a successful athlete. I might be able to redeem myself in like the quiz show sort of market. I didn't ask who I was going to be on with because I didn't really want to know because they told me they were stupid. I was on with Giles Brandreth, ex-MP, Oxford educated, yep. The Poet Laureate Andrew Motion, yeah. Oh, it gets worse, Stephen Fry. And the 3 guys were really rubbish on their specialist subject. They got 8, I got 14. Yes. And then Stephen Fry did general knowledge, and he got 19. Yeah. And I came second. So it's not about the winning. Yeah. So, but you know, it was great. Would I ever do it again? Well, probably not. But it was an amazing opportunity, and I wouldn't have had the chance to do those things. Unless I've been involved in sport. And sport has given me so much. It's about the friends I've made. You know, I met people in my sport at 14, 15 years old. They're still some of the best friends in my life. I learned sort of discipline, I learned working with other people, and there are so many things that sport's given me that I just never would have imagined would have been possible. So for me, that's why it's important that we get lots of other things in sport right, that we can... maybe it's a bit too much of hope that we can sort all the national governing bodies out, but, you know, just making lots of things work and we're making sure that we have the right access for young people into sport. And when I was thinking about, well, you know, a question I get asked an awful lot as I travel around the country, I live in the northeast, I live near Darlington. Lots of people say to me, well, what are the Olympics going to do for us? What are the Paralympics going to do for us? And it's so many things. It's about bringing lots of people in to London and the rest of the country during games time. But for me, I think it's also about showing the world what we can do. Because actually what we're really good at doing is we're really good at organising things. I spend, you know, a lot of time visiting the Olympic Park and looking at the venues and looking at the organisation. I was in a meeting today where we were discussing food for the athletes, and they already know right now what every single athlete will be eating every single day between the holding camps and games time. And the level of detail and planning is absolutely amazing. And part of that is because, you know, people like Seb, because he's an athlete, he understands what it's about, he understands what we're trying to do. There's great staff there, but also is that belief that it was something that we should try for. You know, people like Richard who are saying, come on guys, this is what we need to do. We need to take people with us. We need to show the world what we can do. And that's a really big part of what I think the Olympics and Paralympic Games can bring us. The training camps are incredibly important. I know when we travel with the British team, it was always a big part of what we did. We visited local schools and we talked to children about what it takes to be an athlete. And I know there's lots of countries that find that a really important part of their pre-games holding camps. But for me, I think the big thing that we can do, and the Olympics will be amazing because they always are amazing, but the big thing that we can do in this country is really change the attitude around the Paralympics and Paralympians. London was always about the 2 games. It was always about hosting an amazing Olympics and an amazing Paralympics. The other cities bidding for the games didn't do that. They just said, well, whatever we do for the Olympics, we'll do for the Paralympics. London was always like a massive step ahead of that. And what I think we can do with hosting the Games is actually really push, you know, a change in attitudes towards disability, because whatever way you look at it, for a number of disabled people, life in the UK can still be pretty hard. It's hard to get into the right schools, it's hard to get into further education, it's hard to get into housing, and it's hard to get into jobs. But actually, by showing the Paralympics on TV, we can start, you know, making people think differently about that. Over 1 million people have signed up for tickets for the Paralympics. They'll be on sale on 9th of September. So please put your names down for that, because it's about showing value to the athletes and how hard they train, and making sure that we get the full stadiums. Beijing was able to fill their stadiums because the army went out and told people they had to come and watch, which is a really interesting concept. And I did suggest that in one meeting, but apparently we're not allowed to do it. Don't know why. Oh, democracy, that was the one, yeah. You know, what we need to do is kind of keep pushing that, because, you know, the guys in the Paralympics, you know, Dave Weir, Shelley Woods, you know, guys who are household names already, we need to kind of keep pushing that and make sure that the Paralympics from now on in will never be the same again. My first Games were Seoul in '88. Nobody knew what the word Paralympics meant. There was no coverage on TV whatsoever. Barcelona, each successive Games has kind of moved those barriers. But in London, we can just do so much more than that. And there's local athletes. I mean, that's the other thing. In every part of this area, there will be athletes who are out there training for both Olympics and Paralympics. And it's about getting those guys to be part of the community, and it's getting those guys on school visits, and companies supporting the athletes, because without local support, it's really hard for a lot of athletes to be able to train and do all the things they need to. When they get to a certain level, the lottery funding is absolutely incredible, and the support they get through medical bills and all those other things is absolutely amazing, but athletes have to get to that level. So what I would ask is, if you know athletes in your area who have an aspiration, who are close to getting to 2012, help them as much as you can. It's not buckets and buckets of money. They will kill me for saying that. But it's actually about having people outside the family who are able to offer them support, because we have to give all our athletes the best chance we possibly can to be there and to be winning in 475 days. Do you know what? I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't been an athlete. I think I probably would have been a lawyer, because I always used to think that they used to argue a lot. And I used to watch Crown Court on telly and thought it was quite exciting. It's probably not the best way to make a career choice. But sport has just been the most amazing thing in my life, and I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change any of the races I lost, because I learned as much from the races I lost as I learned from the races that I've won. But for me now, I've got a 9-year-old, and I get asked about her all the time. I had a journalist ring me when she was 2 days old and asked me whether she was going to be a runner, and I wasn't dressed, and it was like, I have no idea. The answer I usually give, because the poor thing has quite a lot of pressure on her to be sporty, is that, you know, my father was an architect. I'm not an architect. Just because, you know, mum and dad were athletes, why should Karis possibly, you know, be an athlete? Don't tell her, but the real reason is she runs like this. So I keep saying elbow, and I, oh, don't coach, don't be a psycho mum. But she does. It's really hard. It's like, I'd never held a baby when I had my daughter, and it was a bit of a shock because they had wobbly heads, and it was all a bit worrying. And yeah, and you know, the kind of assumption that she would do sport, you know, and people say to me, is she sporty? You go, no, not really. Okay, she cycles and she swims, she does gymnastics and rugby and football and dancing and tennis, and she's not going to play at Wimbledon either. But for me, it's about giving her all the opportunities that I had. It's about trying. She's quite artistic, actually, so, you know, who knows what she's going to be. But for me, it's about making sure, and when I was growing up, I thought that every child had the same opportunities that I did. Sort of quite a naive view of the world when you're kind of 10, 11, 12 years old. And it was only when I got to sort of 15, 16 that I realised that not every young person had that opportunity. So for me with Karis, it's about trying to just give her that chance to be what she can. I'd love it if she played rugby for Wales. She's not very good at rugby either. But to try and give her a bit of a head start, although I was living in the north of England, I did go back to Cardiff to make sure that she was born in Wales. it's fine. She's got English residency. It's okay. She can choose. She's not going to do sport. My husband's a Yorkshireman. Is that okay? Yeah, is that good? Yeah, okay. And he was completely fine because the option was basically having her in Middlesbrough or having her in Cardiff, so he couldn't have her in kind of proper Yorkshire, so he was completely fine about me going back to Wales to have her. But actually, as I was in labour, he said to me, Tanni, there's one thing I want you to do for me. And it was like, just, go away from me right now, please. And he gave me a piece of sticking plaster. I was like, what's that for? Anyway, he'd got some Yorkshire mud on it. And he did say to me, although the baby was born in Cardiff, she'd be born on Yorkshire soil. No, we've got a fairly strange family, haven't we? I used to think my family were really normal and really okay. And then the more I talk about it, I just think, okay, that's just, yeah. I think what my family could probably do with some help, actually. The final thing I want to say, really, is actually it's down to my daughter. She's inherited all my parents' wonderful genes for being very straight and direct, and I get asked quite a lot about how I can possibly sum up my athletics career. And it's kind of quite weird because when you retire as an athlete, people think you're going to keel over and die and you're going to go away and disappear and not do anything else with your life. And Karis kind of spent 6 years of her life being dragged around track. She thinks athletics is really boring. She came to Beijing with me to the Olympics and she told her teacher, Mummy made me go to the Olympics. Okay. But when I retired, I retired in my last race was in Manchester in 2007. And I kind of really just decided that, I was kind of getting a bit older and I was getting injured and there were other things that I wanted to do. And actually, athletics, although it had always been the most important thing in my life, that kind of process had changed for me. And there were other things that I wanted to do more than just purely train and be an athlete. BBC were filming my last race and it was really sweet. And there was a journalist there and he said, what we'd like to do, we'd like to film, it was a 200-metre race, we'd like to film the last bit of the race and then like to swing the camera around to where your family will hopefully be crying. Can you make sure that they cry and they look sad? Okay. And then they said, we'd just like to ask your daughter one question. So I said, absolutely, yeah, no problem at all. I'm really fine with that. I'm just, Karis will be okay. And they did that, and they filmed it, and they turned towards Karis, and they said, what do you think of your mummy's athletics career? And Karis just looked at them and went, she just used to go around in circles. So there is nothing you can do about your family, you just have to live with them. Thank you very much for inviting me here tonight. It's an absolute pleasure. I have to say, it is wonderful to be back in Sheffield and not wear an athletics kit. And not be on a windy track, or I got lost in Sheffield in the half marathon once. I'm not sure how I possibly did that, but it's a real pleasure for me to be back here, and thank you very much.